This conference will now be recorded.
So we record it, we'll put it on CDR's YouTube channel. A lot of times people can't attend. They might have other things, fires burning in the business or something like that that they need to take care of. We want to record the stuff. And you can go back and review it or share it with the members of your team that things are appropriate for. So having said all that, it's 2 minutes after 10. We're going to jump in because we also want to keep this concise, crisp, as I can manage to do anyway, and keep it, sort of fenced into an hour's time frame so that we don't run too long and take up a lot of your time today. So here we go. I'm going to hit the space bar, and hopefully my stuff will advance to get on the right focus here. All right, so I'm going to go down through this list. So number one, and these are in no particular order, they're loosely organized, but not in any particular order as far as what's important to your particular company or your team that may be viewing this. So I'm going to start with what we call patch 12.429, and that's a view of pre-booked, a customer view of pre-booked items. So it's the F15. So we're going to take a 3, a 22, a 19, a 1, a F15. That's how we're going to get there. So let me jump my session over to here. And so let's go to the pre-book menu. So one way to get there, the way I usually go, is this way, which is what's in the navigation information. And a new feature added is this suggestion that we had from a customer. Sometimes you want to view things, all the items for a particular customer. So I'm going to press F15, which is a shift F3 for people that are unaware of that. And if we put a customer number here, so you can see all the upcoming pre-book items, the ship date by customer. So if we focus in on one particular customer like B&B Food Store, and so just another view. So we have views where you look at pre-book orders themselves, where you're looking basically at header level information. We also have option 2 on the pre-book menu, which is looking at items, and then you have to reverse engineer and go back down to drill back and see the customers. This is another way to sort of segment that data and allow you to look at it. There's some restrictors at the top, ship date, particular pre-book order, things that you can focus in on, those codes that a lot of people use to organize the pre-book orders into meaningful segments of things based off of the business purpose behind that. So that's what's involved in that first option. So I hit the right key and go back to the menu. Let's just jump over to my list. All right, these contract things, there are 3 in a row here that we want to talk about. And we've had a lot of input from people because of the prevalent price changes going. Aiden, I think we might have somebody that's unmuted. I hear some rumbling through the speaker there. Yeah, in today's world, with all the supply chain things going on and inflation and all the other stuff going on, price changes apparently are coming on such a basis it's hard to manage. Obviously, the distributor wants to stay profitable with all these things going on, and sometimes you have contracts set up where you need to manipulate things. So we've gotten good feedback. This first thing I'm going to show has been rolled out. Actually, 3 distributors are running it, so we've gotten feedback. We've done some improvements. It was a good suggestion. We've gotten good feedback and suggestions to improve it. So I'm going to show that first one with the contract percentage calculator. So let me jump over, and I'm going to go back to the main menu and sort. Of course, contracts are over here. So let's just pick a place and go in. And so we call those tools. You're in work with customer contracts. This, I believe, is also available on the matrix level contract definition. So I'm going to press F23, which is the shift F11. And this is the tool we're talking about. So it's pretty powerful, and with power comes responsibility and sometimes danger. So be cautious as you work with this, but it does work, and it does as is advertised. So what you can do, if you want to update contracts for a given customer, that's optional entry, or for a given billing matrix, you can restrict to a given sales class. Now, these are not optional, so you got to choose either a sales class or product class. Those are the main ones we focused on, not the categorical or the item level. The item level is too fine a detail. Category, little too high level. But essentially, you're going to come through here, and if you want it to affect, let's say for sales class, if I'll just press F4 and select the sales class here, and just grab one. And so it's either or, sales class or product class. Then you must choose a contract type that you're going to affect, because it will complain if you don't. That's a required field. So I'm going to press F4 there to search. And I'm going to say find everything. And so for those unfamiliar or that need a little refresher, these are the different contract types that are supported. List. I won't go through all of them, but so if we say I just want to go affect, for instance, this type here, which is a manufacturer list cost, stipulate a warehouse. For most people, that will be a 1, but people in multi-warehouse operations, you know the drill. This is an extra added little option. I want to explain why it's here. Do we want to affect the list price in the item master file and the manufacturer suggested retail price at the same time? Why would you want to do that? And the reason this is in here is the first adopter that used this said, we want to raise, the purpose behind all this was to gently raise some prices on things to cover your operational costs, inflation, and all the other things going on in our world today. But if you have a customer and they don't have a contract for anything, they're going to revert back to the list price in the item master file. And so you can optionally change that information as well if you say with a Y here. Now, how you're going to change it appears down here. So, and also this does feed the item change master, which is the driver for price change notification. So if you say yes here, it's going to update that information, which feeds the conduit to update price change notifications to the customers. So basically, you're going to choose who to affect. If you choose nobody, it's going to affect any qualifying contract that, in my example here, falls under class 402. That is a type 8 contract. For warehouse 1, I want to also update the item master list price and manufacturer suggested retail price by what. And here's the what down here. So this is a percentage you can enter. So if I want to increase by 2%, I would do that. That's going to be 2%. You notice you can carry it out into decimal places, so gives you some a little latitude as far as how much you affect things by. Or it could be an amount, so a dollar amount, cents amount, and so forth. When you press F10, it runs that process and updates things. So we've gotten, like I say, good reports on people running this to address things. So F10 would update that stuff. Now I'm going to try to press F15 because I think that's another tool. Let's just look over here and see if that is the change log. No. This is another little set of tools that we decided to put on this page. So if I press F15, let's see what that does for me. So some additional tools that we had sitting in CDR's toolbox that we use. Now these are things that, they're powerful. And when you can change a lot of contracts, you want to make sure that you know what you're about to change. If you have a question, I urge you to call CDR support before you commit a cardinal error. But what you can do in these additional tools, copy one sales class to a product class. So say you have things set up, and I see a little typo there on that, and that would be my fault, that little extra S there. But these tools have been in existence, things that we use. So say, for instance, you had contracts set up at a sales class level, but you wanted to copy them to a product class. Sometimes you're reorganizing things, you need to change stuff up. That tool will allow you to take any contracts, the contracts that you define at a sales class, and copy those to product class contracts. Another one is to copy product class contracts to a new product class. So maybe you need to subdivide. Maybe you had a product class, you need to divide it into two product classes. So you're going to move things from one to another. That just allows you to copy contracts from an existing product class to a new product class. Delete class level contracts. Be careful with that one because it is potentially dangerous. And if you're unsure about what to do, abort. So a 0 takes me out here. If I take these other options 1 through 3, it's going to give you some instruction. And I'll just show you one, for example, here. Let's get my cursor in the right spot here. And so when you do that, it's going to tell you this is what you're about to do. Select a source, then a target. So it's going to ask you to select a sales class, from one sales class to a product class. So the source is going to be a sales class. So you would choose here. And then you would choose a product class to copy to, just to sort of give you an idea of what would happen here. Now, if I don't choose anything and I press F3, it just aborts. And so if you get into it and you're unsure, don't choose a class and nothing happens. And so that's another way if you don't choose the abort option to get in there. But I just wanted to kind of show that because people will ask when they see this. But sometimes those things are handy, and we've had a lot of these things in our toolbox at CDR for support staff to use, but we want to empower the distributors to use those things. So I've gobbled up a bunch of time on this, but I thought it was important in today's world to go through that. So I'm going to press F3 and get it here. I'm not going to make my change, but it does work. And I'm going to flip over to our list just to keep things moving along. So that was that one. Contract change log. Oh boy, we've had people request this for quite a time, and it's gotten more pressure on it with today's world and changing contracts. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to the same spot we were in, roughly. And if I go back out to the main menu, so from work with customer contracts or work with billing matrix contracts, I'm going to take one of those options. I'll just do the customer level one. And you'll notice F1 log. And so now we have a change log for contracts that keep track of things. So I think I might have a few things in my example here. So you can focus on the criteria at the top. You know, if you want to refine down to contract changes done for a particular customer or particular matrix, an item number, a vendor, product class, sales class, category, a change date, a contract type. All those things are filters at the top, or we usually refer to those as restrictors, filters or restrictors. And you can see down here that the record was created. So we created some things, so this one was created. There was no percentage before because it was just created. The after percentage, so at a field level, the percentage, the dollar value, the type, those things are being recorded, which should be useful as you go along and try to figure out who changed something, when did they change it. So you can see here where I'm setting up some example data yesterday to show in here. So the contract change log is going to be a handy tool, I think, for people when you get when a problem comes up and you want to figure out when it happened, who did it. Maybe it's a coachable moment for somebody. That is available. So that's the change log, the edit contract master details. This one's simple, a simple change, but it was important to some people because you can go in here and see the contract master details. Let's go back into our good old buddy here. And if you choose just a given set, like here I'm in customer, someone choose a given customer, and what was added before, it would just show the description, but not the actual numeric value behind it. So here, best value cigarettes in my system is a product class, but you didn't know that it was product class 500. Not a big deal, but if you're somebody that's new to the company or you're not familiar with the structure and you're trying to find things, it's just enables you to see what the actual value is behind that. So, so here is the sales class for 502. Not a big change, but hopefully something that's a quality of life improvement for everybody. Jumping back over to my list, we're showing the number. Okay, edit rebates. This was something that was brought to our attention by a new customer, and I think that you will find people that have been on the system for many years will probably find a purpose for this. So this is edit rebates, and I want to kind of explain the backstory on that. Oops, go back here. So 328, then option 2 to edit. Let's just show that. Not a lot to show there, but if I just back up a level, I think I'll be, yep, wanted to stay where I was, I believe. Work with rebates and edit one with an option. And there's really nothing to show, but I wanted to explain it. So let's take a premise, for example. Say, for instance, that you are rebating. Maybe it's off invoice, maybe it's accumulated for later use, whichever it happens to be, but maybe you're doing it for an entire class. In my example here, this is a product class, but maybe if I wanted to set one up at an item level and opt that item out, now you can do that because it works in a hierarchical fashion, but before, the rebate value was a required field. Now, it's no longer a required field. So if you leave it empty, the rebate is 0. If you intend it to be 0, that's okay. No rebate will be given. So it's a way for you to opt out. So in my example, if you set up rebate, say for instance for a sales class or product class, but there are certain items within that you don't want to give a rebate for a particular reason, just at all. It's not a different rate. It's nothing they get. Then now you can put a rebate value in of 0, and those items that are in there, or those entries that are in there with the 0 value, are just blocked from getting that. So fairly straightforward and simple, but gives you more flexibility when you set things up. So we thought that would be an important thing to show. Work with rebate payables. There is a widescreen version of that now. So now I am going to go back to the main billing menu by pressing F3 here. And under rebate payables, there's just a widescreen version of it now, which has more information pushed out to the outside because we have more room. So you can see the total rebate from out here, the number of lines affected inside of that when you drill in. So you don't have to drill in as much. You can see the particular invoice number that was involved, the total rebate value of that invoice, and how many line items were participants in that rebate. So wanted to show you that. Let's go back to our list. Work with that's at a glance summary. So let's hit the space bar and move forward. Display locations. This is available in a lot of spots, but I kind of want to show you the main spot, or one spot where you can view it when you're inside edit items. So let's jump over to our green screen and go back to the main menu and go to products, and we'll just grab a product, hopefully one that's got a location to it. In my example data here, let's see if we have something here. So from within here, if I press F6 for locations, And now you can find, and like I say, this is available in some other spots. We would, if you have suggestions of other places that you don't see this, to show up. But what it allows you to do is find things with the code date. So by code date, for those that don't use product dating part of the system, you can go in and you can designate this item has a code date, it's sensitive, it has an expiration date essentially, and you want to move that product out. You want to get, cycle those things out. You don't want product going old and stale that you have to just basically not make any money on because you can't sell it anymore. So this just allows you to find things with the code date older than and find the location those are in. So that was one little extra piece to the puzzle. That's a common one. There are a couple other places where that same function is called. You probably, if you're working with the system, know those spots already. Add customer number to the copy order from history. So if I take a 311, and this is actually done, so here I'm staying on the billing menu, copy order. Somebody suggested this because when you're in here before, I don't think you could not restrict to a customer number. And if you have chains, things where everybody's named with a similar name, it's just maybe a store number difference or something, and you want to make sure you grab the correct customer to copy from, that's why this becomes important. So if I go over here and maybe I put a customer number in, I see that we don't have an F4 search on there, so that needs to be added in here. It's probably an afterthought. So if I wanted to restrict there, but just another way to sort of fine tune, make sure you don't grab a different store in the chain where you'll see these B&D food stores or something of that nature. So that customer number is added in there. Not a huge deal, but if you grab the wrong customer number, it becomes a huge deal because now you've copied the wrong thing. Now you've got to undo that, go back and do the right one. Not a lot of fun. Work with routes, add the customer count to each route. We thought this was useful. I have used this personally looking at people's systems. So let's go look at that. So if I go back to the main menu and take option 1, and routes are underneath customers. And so if I take route master definitions, and this was added in, so you can see the total number of customers and the total active customers, because there might be a difference between those. So you can see a route that's loaded up with customers that has a lot. Maybe if I restrict to delivery type routes up here at the top by putting a D. And so you can just see a count. It can be handy. It can be handy if you're looking to reorganize some routes. You see a route that's heavy on the number of customers that are tied to it. May be useful. Certainly doesn't hurt to have that information at your fingertips when you come in here. That was the thought process on that. And that was a suggestion from a customer, a distributor. Moving along. Work with purchasing item, added access to the explode screen and the explode screen. I'm going to kind of cover both of these at the same time. And this other one, purchasing, I'm just going to talk about that issue, but let's go over here and look at I think possibly a largely unknown part of the system, people that know about it, but I would kind of want to expose you to this as a way to find things about the properties for a given item related to purchasing. Not edit item, but the things that are more, the specialized things that have to do with purchasing. So if I take option 5 for purchasing and take option 21 for purchasing reports, and then there were a lot, and so then we had an overflow menu, purchasing reports too, and that's where that's going to be our playground for this little piece of the puzzle. So this function right here, if you are unfamiliar with this, it can be handy at times, because before, if you wanted to get to the given purchasing properties for an item, you had to know the vendor it was tied to if you didn't come. So this sort of allows you to go the other direction instead of from vendor to items, from item to vendors. That was the initial purpose of this screen. So if I take option 10, and what the thing that we just did was add the details in here to get to the explode screen. Now, I find this screen handy if maybe you had an item set up under dot and you need to move it to the actual manufacturer, or vice versa. You need to move things around, and this is just a way to find items, what they're tied to for the purposes of purchasing. But primarily, so this screen does other things, or is used for other things, but what we're talking about adding here, what was added, is if I do a 5 beside an item, it takes you to the new widescreen explode screen, which is, for those that are familiar with it, and a lot of buyers use this, they understand how this works, and we didn't move anything from the old screen, but we added a whole other section of things that were suggested to us, and you'll see that we have some empty real estate in here. If you have suggestions of other things that are useful, please let us know so we can add those in and fill this screen out. But we put the things in that made sense to us. So all this section over here, if you're if you're a buyer in the purchasing department, you probably are familiar with this information. But what was added over here, the last PO quantity, the last PO number. Now I picked one that doesn't have data in it, my example data, but the last PO number, the last PO date, when the next PO containing this item is expected, the UPC code, just for, because people are going and look to another screen to get the UPC code, so sometimes that's handy. Then we put some other properties. Is it a catch weight item? Does it have special authorization? And by that I mean that little flag and edit item where you can say this is an authorized item, and by that I don't mean it's kind of sits on top of the whole notion of having authorized item lists and customers being authorized. That's that place where you can say this item has special properties about it where we don't want everybody maybe to buy it. Maybe it's a proprietary item that you carry that has a logo for a chain, or it's an item that's only available in certain states, regardless of whether that's an authorized type of customer. So that's the flag that I'm referring to. Is it a guaranteed item? Is it a pre-book only type of item? The quantity sold month to date, the quantity sold year to date, all here at a glance. So those are things that were added into this screen. Some nice suggestions that we got from other distributors to put on the screen, and we just had run out of space on here to shoehorn anything else in. So that is out there. We're at the halfway mark through our presentation because we want to fence this guy into a 1 hour presentation max to not take up too much of your time. I just kind of wanted to talk about this one. We had a request in the past. You could go cancel a PO, and if you put the option in to cancel it, and I think it was a 9. Let's just look at that. Cancel a PO. It's actually a C, not a 9. So a C to cancel it, and it would just do it. What happens now if you go to cancel a PO, and you can't cancel one that's been received, it's got to be an open status. Cancel. So if I go to cancel one of these, now we'll just kind of walk you through it real quickly. What it did in the past, people said, we weren't prompt because somebody grabbed the wrong thing. They canceled a PO they shouldn't have canceled, and now they had to redo it. That's a pain. So we put a prompt in there. But the prompt would come up if I wanted to cancel 3 POs all at one time. It would prompt over and over. And I had a customer that was telling me, I do dot orders, and I don't know the reason, but they needed to cancel maybe 15, 20 orders every Wednesday, I think they said. And it was annoying that it asked them, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Every time. And so we relaxed that rule, and that's what this change does. So if I go to cancel these POs, and I'm just going to I'm gonna do 2. Well, I probably shouldn't do that because somebody may be using this to play. But essentially what happens is it asks you one time. So you go to cancel. If you're canceling 20, while you're in that session, cancel 20 all at once, or while you stay in there, you can actually, the screen can refresh, you can do other things. But until you F3 and get out of this, it's going to ask you one time when you cancel, are you sure? And if you say, I am sure, then it's going to allow you to cancel without getting in your face and asking you over and over, are you sure? So that's kind of a minor change, but if you're doing a lot of things like the customer that I talked to on that, it was an aggravation that slowed down their day, and their day was busy enough. And I think it was Wednesdays, if I remember correctly. So that's what that option does. Work with vendor items wide display, and I want to just talk to this one for a moment on the widescreen version of work with vendor items. So if I go in here, grab somebody to look at, this little guy over here was intended to hide things if they were ineligible, if you had them inactive for buying. And so you could hide them. The all says show all, and that is a sticky value, by the way, that remains once you set it. So if I want to say I don't want to show all, then it would hide the things that were inactive for purchasing. But what we discovered, it was reported to us, is it was also hiding things that were inactive for the selling side, and that wasn't an optimal result. And so that's what that change just relaxes that, so it functions the way it was originally intended, which is basically just to hide things that are inactive for purchasing. That's that option. Let's see. And work with POs. If you do back ordering, I've had people tell me, well, we never back order. And I think traditionally a lot of people do not back order. They just order again at some point. But for those who do, and you're creating a back order PO, now you can just go find those quickly by saying, I think you put a B in here if I remember correctly. Yep. So now just a way, if you do back order, and you can get to the back order POs without having to scroll and search and look for things. So quality of life improvement for people that need that type of function. And that brings us to the end of that page of presentations. For people that manipulate the authorized item list, which is, I think, the lion's share of our customer set, this could be an important tool for you. Basically, we had a request to add in vendor as a control, a filter on that, and product class. So let me just show you what that screen looks like. So if we go back to the main menu, so I like to get there by taking a 3, and the navigation stuff is in that stuff already, and I think it's 19. And I want to create or update. This is the guy we're talking about. So now other qualifiers added in, vendor number and product class side by side here. People that are unfamiliar, over the years, this is slowly, incrementally had things added to it, item collections, customer collections. If you're unfamiliar with this as a tool to manipulate, a customer collection and an item collection are just ways to aggregate or create a list of things that you can use on a one-time basis, or you can save those to use over and over again. A customer collection example might be everybody within a given chain, and maybe they're not organized as a retail matrix. Maybe it's a loose affiliation, or any kind of affiliation you have for collections or of customers or item collections. A very handy way to to put things together and on a one-off basis, or to save them and have them to use for future purposes. Here's another request that we had: email addresses for document distribution. So for people that are doing emailing by document, in the beginning we had email addresses for a customer, but when you have a chain, or maybe different, or the roles and responsibilities for the retailer are divided across multiple personnel, and you need multiple addresses. That's where the e-document distribution came in, where you can specify, hey, for invoice it needs to go here, if it's an AR statement it needs to go there, if it's a price change notification over here. So that whole thing in there, but we were still limited to 2 email addresses. So what was added was the ability to have more. So if I go over to system option maintenance, and then I go to the email menu, and this is the guy we're talking about right here: work with document distribution. So on the outside, on this screen right now at this point, we're only showing 2 of the email addresses, but when you drill in, so we're using, probably you would think of these as the primaries, but when you do a 2 to edit, that's where you'll find the additional 2 entries for email addresses. If it's non-blank and that document's being sent out here, it's a ACH notification, then any non-blank entry, we send out that email for that document type. And that's what that change is all about. Pre-book unauthorized item list. Oh, yes. All right, here's a scenario for you. I've created a bunch of pre-book orders. I want to know who's not authorized. I'm trying to force something out. I'm trying to send somebody a pre-book for some reason. They're on an authorized item list, that particular store. I need to know what's not authorized so I can authorize. Now, there are some widgets and things we have in place to automatically authorize. Some people like to use those automatic authorizations. Other people say, no, I want to manage that. I need to manage that myself but for various and sundry reasons. So let me just show you where that list is. I jump over and go to the pre-book menu. So I'm going to go back and navigate through the system. 22, 19, and all that fun stuff is over on basically pre-book reports. They're not always printed reports. Sometimes they're information, and that stuff lives under the pre-book audit log. And I have nothing in here on this system. How wonderful for our presentation. But the list we're talking about is the print unauthorized. And I hope people are familiar with this screen. It's a good place to go find things. And let me just pull up another session here. It's where we work and play the developers. So it's kind of might not be the best data to look at. It's the test data, but yeah. I just want to kind of show you what that screen looks like, because when things are exported, when a pre-book's created, for those who are unfamiliar, or maybe you say, hey, we automatically export pre-books, but this didn't go out. Why didn't it go out? And if it tries to send out a pre-book item and it finds there's insufficient quantity, that will show up. So there's a lot of things that show up in this log besides this print unauthorized list. That's just an extra thing that we put in there. So if you're not familiar with this function, and this is our go-to. The first time, if we get a support call about pre-books, why didn't something happen, or who did something to it, this is the place where we go. And if you looked at it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we have incrementally added different things in there as they came up. So it also would show where people were doing pre-book global tools and manipulating some things, showing things that changed. And if you have suggestions in here of things that you want to show up that are not, let us know. We have continually added things over the past 5 years to that auto log, but I just kind of wanted to show you that. I'll go back over to our main presentation where the data is a little cleaner. All right, so that was that. The unauthorized item list for pre-books. Select items for order, the widescreen. This is how we did not have this, I don't know, but it was pointed out to us. So let's just look and I'll show you what that's all about. So if you're in creating an order or editing an order, and I'll just find one of these and jump in. And what we're really talking about, I believe, is this screen right here. And we had a customer go live on the system, and anytime that you have a big mix of items with things that were deleted, inactive, of course, obviously active items are what you need to fulfill. And all we did was add this little column. It's not a huge deal. But boy, oh boy, if you're trying to do something and it's inactive, it probably shouldn't be on the list, but sometimes you want to see the stuff because you've inactivated it, but previously it was active, and maybe a lot of people use this screen for phone-in orders, things of that nature, where they pull this screen up and the customer's sort of walking them through, and it's just handy to have that status code out there on the that side. This is a very handy-dandy screen if you are unfamiliar with it, where you can restrict by category, sales class, items that they've purchased in the past X amount of days. It does a lot of nice things in there. Get out of that. Back to the list. So that status was added on there. The contain select for widescreen now has an item status restrictor on it as well. See if I can pull an example up for that. So I believe this is what we're looking at. The contain screen as well as this one. So just ability to filter is going to default to active items, but sometimes you're looking for things and they're no longer an active item. So that was added in. Let's see what else we have in our list. Some of these we will just talk about. And here's one. Invoice H. What is invoice H? We letter the different versions of invoices. I forget how many letters we've gone up to now, but J or K, I think there's a K. So a lot of different versions, but people running invoice version H, oops, let me go back. You can now print a little P prints beside an item indicating that it came from pre-books. Some people have pre-book messages come along and flow through. Other people opt that out. It's just another way to designate to the retailer, why did I get this item? I didn't place it on my order this week. Well, it's a pre-book item. And so just a way to designate that. So not a lot to show there, but that is an option out there now, or a function. This reprint just the price stickers. This all has to do with picking. I know that Mark worked on that, and the situation came up where if you were doing a pick run and outputting some things, and maybe the printer jammed, or there was a problem with the stickers and they got jacked up, to use a colloquial term, you had to reprint the whole route to get those stickers back, and Mark has added an option to just do the stickers alone, which is awesome. When you get in a jam there, you don't want to repick the entire route. You just need the stickers. Invoice B, sort L, the ability to print category and total weight. So here's a letter. Invoice B is a very common invoice format that people use. You have different sort options. I think sort L is the one that sorts by warehouse location. Some people like that because their warehouse locations sort of make sense to the delivery driver and to the retailer as well. So that version, print category and total weight. This tells you how to turn that option on. Select orders for processing use a production date. I'll talk about that for just a moment here in our closing minutes here. A lot of distributors, not everybody, but when you're working, maybe you're working a day ahead, 2 days ahead, and to make things work more smoothly, a lot of people will use the DAC calendar, where you say this actual date in the real calendar equates to my business date of this. People use that a lot. It has a lot of purposes, and probably, let's say, half of the customer distributor base using our product probably uses that calendar. But what it didn't do is it select orders for processing, which is this screen here. This is what I'm referring to. Select orders for processing is all of those screens. They just operate in different modes. And the date that would appear in here that it would use was this date here, which was typically the actual true calendar date, not the production date that you're working on. And that was just a change that was made to make life a little simpler for operators when they're selecting things. Another quality of life improvement, we hope. Definitely was a request from a customer, not just something we did because we thought it was a good idea. Nothing to show here, but when we get when a UPC arrives in an order or for the different spots in the system, we have added some additional trapping in there to resolve that UPC code that flows in back to your given item number that relates to that. And that's been an ongoing process. It's pretty been in place for a long time. They must have found just a couple little things to make it better. I don't know the particular information on that, exactly what it addressed, but it was an improvement that was done for that. This is one that has come up a lot, and this is one that helps CDR's after-hours support team as well as the business hours support team, and that is when somebody goes to select orders for processing, that screen that we just looked at, for instance, if you're doing invoice selection or or invoice posting, there are many places where we need to write things into folders in the system, and the access to a folder on the IBMI system is controlled at a user level. And so if you set up a brand new user, or maybe somebody ends the day or does a post run for the first time and they've never done it before, and somebody forgot to set them up for access to actually write things into folders in the file system, it would come to a grinding halt. You would get an error. And so this change that was put in recently, it just validates that user running that has that access and stops them before they proceed. That way you avoid an error. It's a lot less messy to deal with, and makes life better for you and for CDR as well, where we can focus on things that add value and not just chasing down problems. So that's what that change equates to. And then in the closing minutes, we always want to focus in what's new in DAC on the core package. But we've done several of these. I think this might be the fourth installment of what's new in DAC, and we felt like it would be advisable just to list a few things. Not go off into detail about things that have been added into other parts of the system that are well adopted, and DAC Connect being one of them. So just to kind of show and talk for a moment about things that were added in. So I'll kind of crisply walk through this list here. There is in DAC Connect a place to set up what we call in there a custom order guide. And that was initially put in the system for people where the salesperson is a food service person, and maybe they're out prospecting for business, and this has been in DAC Connect for 10 years or more. But you're prospecting for business and you want to go out and do a bid on food service type items, where in that whole domain prices are negotiable, and you can set up a price floor where the salesperson can't go below that level. All those things have been in there, but you can produce a custom order guide in there to leave with the customer, or you can use it for other purposes. And what we added was a barcode to that list. So the barcode for the item. So if you actually do commit that to paper and print it, or maybe if you have the type of scanner that can scan from a screen, you can scan the stuff that's in there. We initially did it, and the symbology was changed to make it a little more readable, a little more scannable. But all those are things that have been, the barcode and the change of symbology have all happened in the past 3 months since the last session. We did add the rebate value. If you're in DAC Connect and you're doing price inquiry, we now show the rebate. The salesperson is out there in the field and they need to look at stuff. Sometimes they need to know what that rebate value is, even though it might not be affecting the off invoice, but just so they know. We had a place in DAC Connect where you could actually key in a customer number up here in the top, been there for a long time. If you keyed in a bad customer number, it would take you to a screen that did nothing. That now produces a hard stop. Never realized that it did that till somebody pointed that out. We increased the size of the little virtual number pad in DAC Connect for ordering. Somebody said, my fingers are too big. Can you make that a little bit larger? And so we did that. We're trying to find the right size. If people are trying to run it on a smartphone, very limited real estate where they have to scroll and pinch and zoom and do things of that nature. So it was a mild increase in the size of that. You can, back to that custom order guide, you can sort it now. You have options to sort it in different ways. We added some additional sort options in there for that. We added the quantity available to the multi-item order page. You can see that once you actually put the stuff into selected things from that multi-item order page, but you couldn't see it till you put something in. Now you can see quantity available directly from there. The big one, or the one that I think might be the most useful, is the one that we have a little screen display for here. And so now a new button has been added into DAC Connect that says My Customer Order. So when you are using DAC Connect and you are a salesperson, this only works if your employee ID or your salesperson ID is populated or is present in here. Then if you click this button, My Customer Orders, it will show you every order that's in the system out there, regardless of whether it came from DAC Connect, from DAC Express, from ZZ, from Web Console, whatever source it is, it's going to show you your customers and the orders they have outstanding at this point in this little list down here. So this is what you see ordinarily, and this is the little PDF that comes up. Now mine's kind of minimal, but it does show where it came from. Oops, let me go back. Shouldn't click there. Shows the source it came from, what its current status is, the total dollar value, the total quantity, how many cigarette cartons are on there. The feedback we got is the salespeople were out in the field periodically, or maybe at a given time of day. I think the customer that was telling me about this, they said at 11 o'clock every day, our salespeople were calling back into the system before they used DAC Connect to say, what orders, did all of my orders come in because they were using a different order device, not DAC Connect at that point. But just a quick thumbnail, and we had made an attempt at this that was suggested several years back, but you actually had to choose the customer, get in, and drill down. Now we put this function out on the front end. The other function's still there, so we didn't take anything away. We just added to. And I'm watching the clock. Got a few more minutes left here. And just some honorable mentions that I wanted to talk about. A lot of people use DAC Portal, which is the child of Web Console. That DAC Portal is the thing it's a portal primarily focused on ordering, runs on any device. It runs in a browser. A lot of people use that now. There was a way in there to search for an item, and actually it had a limit because of response time, and that response time, or the limit on how when you're doing a search by item description, was limited. I forget what it was. It might have been 50 or 75 records at a time, and now it goes up to 200. So if you're searching, it just made it easier to find things, because we had people report, well, we're finding some things, but other things are not showing up. And what it turned out is they had a special symbol on the front of those other items, and they just were so far down the list that they didn't show up. So not a big deal, but I also wanted to mention that DAC Portal is a thing that you can use and that a lot of people use. Some people use it as their go-to option for retailer ordering, because you're not in the hardware business. You don't have to place hardware out there. If they have a barcode scanner, it adapts for them. Another change, Web Console renders an invoice type of function in there. People have used that for years. But it never showed retail pack description for some reason, and somebody pointed that out to us, so that was added. And DAC Delivery Manager, slowly gaining traction out in the field with more distributors adopting it. It does a lot of things that I won't go into right now because our time is running out. But things that we added in there, terms-based aging, because it does show the amount due to collect, and it was pointed out that that amount due didn't take into account terms-based aging. So if I'm giving a customer 14 days in terms, the amount to collect should not include an invoice that's less than 14 days old. So that's kind of what that's all about. There is a route recap that you can do in DAC Delivery Manager, which basically you can go in, there's a screen to select the stuff. And what we added into there is driver-initiated returns now show up on that recap, listed out by item. So maybe a situation where the driver goes out, they're making the delivery, something gets crushed, it's lost, whatever happens to be, and they do a driver return on it, and it automatically goes into returns management if you have that module license, which a lot of people do. But on the recap now, it lists those out along with a lot of the other stuff. So I wanted to mention that. And you can use DAC Delivery Manager in an offline mode where the driver doesn't have an internet connection. And we have increased the number of totes that you can scan, tote labels, typically from ProCat or a PickRite label, to 252. It was a smaller limit, which was okay if you had one or two stops, but if you wanted to do the entire route in an offline mode and scan things, and then when you get back to the office, upload those, the number of totes you could scan was insufficient, so we've bumped it up to 252. If we find out that that's insufficient, we can increase that again. We think that's probably the sweet spot for that. So now we've come to 11 o'clock. Our hour of time is over. What I've been asked to do, I'm going to turn my screen off. We're going to leave the session up. I think people, I should have said this at the beginning, they might be posting questions and things in the chat box. We leave this open so that our staff that's proctoring this session has a chance to capture that information. If you have a question that you have not posted, this would be a great time. We're going to leave all of that stuff up. All I'm going to do is turn off my camera and microphone and leave the session up for probably another 15 or 20 minutes so you can put questions in there. We will get back to you on those. Just to recap once again, we'll be creating a roll-up with all these things, especially the things for the core package, to begin distributing to people on request starting next week. We've done some work on that process to put those roll-ups together to make it a little easier and quicker for us to get that stuff put together. And we're learning as we go along. So the next session we do will be the third Wednesday in the third quarter, which is going to be the third Wednesday of July. We'll have a session then, and we sure appreciate everybody's time. And if you're watching this online after the fact on YouTube, thank you so much for participating. I hope everybody has a great spring. And here comes summer. Things will get busy. Thanks. Bye.